Hey there, guys. Rain here. Welcome to Fennec Fables again. I am so excited to announce Kyle from 5 Point Games. We're going to be talking about their newest game, A Monster's Tale, which is going to be coming out soon. They just finished up their Kickstarter, and I'm very grateful to have them. I'm going to go through the preliminary things of this is not a paid sponsorship. They have not paid me for any of the opinions or things that we're going to be discussing in this video. It's more just going to be a casual conversation as they get to just be jazzed about their stuff. So, with that saying, Kyle, please join us in the chat. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Kyle. I am sort of the dog body of 5 Points games, and lot of hats. We're a small team, so I guess project lead is my official title, but we're pretty loose with that sort of stuff.
I had a feeling. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, actually?
So not been asked this on an interview. So I've been gaming for a really long time. Fennec and I kind of discussed that early on while we were doing our prep. I've been in the gaming hobby for 30 years at this point.
Started when you were 9, right?
Yeah, 8 or 9. Yeah, I'm close to 40. I'm gonna be 39 this year. So started off with D&D, Warhammer, got into Magic the Gathering, so really got hooked early. I probably could have bought a really nice card by this point if I hadn't spent all my money on
I feel that.
the hobbies. No longer involved in Warhammer just because I don't have the space or the disposable income. Not in Magic the Gathering anymore.
I mean, who is at this point?
Kind of dropped out of. I have some friends who are really, really, really invested in Magic the Gathering.
We'll hold that conversation for later when we're done, because I got my feelings on that too.
Sure. I started playing a game called Magi Nation. They actually just did a new a Kickstarter to do a reprint. That was the trading card game that I fell into around high school age, and all my friends played. I went to an all boys boarding school, so a smaller trading card game was easier for us to sort of get into and share around, because there
makes sense. Yeah,
they only had like three updates to the game, so not a whole lot. And yeah, I moved out from Ohio in 2007 or 2008. Moved here to Phoenix, Flagstaff first, but then Phoenix. So Arizona. And had to leave all my books behind, so I kind of fell out of D&D around 4th ed, and I probably wouldn't have stuck around because I wasn't really a fan of the stuff that I was seeing come out of it. Got really into forum gaming. I've been on Giants in the Playground, which is the Order of the Stick forum. Really, I don't know if you know that one. It used to be a really popular webcomic.
I actually knew very much about the Order of the Stick. It's Order of the Green Stick, if I remember correctly.
Nope, just Order of the Stick.
Well, I just remember there was a green stick involved.
That was Green Hilt.
That's what it was, yes. I actually made a reference to it in one of my videos about familiars and how to handle them, because the raven of one of them only popped up when he was relevant.
Yeah, Vesuvius.
Yep, yeah, I had that referenced in one of my videos about handling animals in games.
Yeah, Blackwing is a really cool character.
I liked that one. I don't want to do any spoilers, but if you've never read Order of the Stick, it's very long and very good.
It is. I will confer it. They just put out not chapter, but whatever you want to call issue number 1301. So yeah, very long running. So
very good story. Don't want to do any spoilers, but it's got a lot of heart.
Yeah, very, very well crafted, and it's reaching its conclusion. So now is probably a good time to get into it. But yeah, played a lot of play-by-post games on their forums. And eventually kind of stumbled into a Masks the New Generation game, which, for those who don't know, that is a PBTA game, which is powered by the Apocalypse game, by Magpie Games. They also do Avatar Legends, Root. They have a pretty extensive catalog, and just kind of fell in love with the system. I really like narrative focused games, narrative forward games. And that kind of brings me to where I am.
So you
I
mentioned
guess the
you're a
company got
small
started.
team, right? I believe it's about
Yeah,
four
so
of
yeah,
you guys working, including the artist.
so officially there's only two of us.
Hmm.
It's myself and Sam Hannis, who is the graphic design and art person. We are the two official and like full-time members of the company.
Hmm.
We have an editor named whose name is John Paul Hurley. Um, so he does the writing editing.
Yeah,
Sam does all the art editing.
making sure the
Um,
words mean what they mean.
right. And I have a development editor. His name is Thomas Hurley. They are related. He's been with us for a really long time. He's basically the third member of the company. But yeah, he has a day job. This is just something that he does as a courtesy. And
As is with many
we
small
also have,
games, you kind of
yeah.
rope in who you can,
Right. And for A Monster's Tale, we have Kelly Morford, who is the person who's doing all the monster design. But
which are remarkable, if I can say, just
oh
to give
yeah,
her due.
she's astounding. Really just incredible. And we're really lucky to have her. And she's Sam's significant other. So we would not be able to afford Kelly or Sam if they weren't personal friends. So
Another thing
which
with small
I
gaming,
know for them.
everybody's doing favors to each other. What's the long running joke in small gaming? It's the same $20 getting spun around by everybody.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, that's our team. We kind of got started. I was running mass games for myself, and I kind of had my own homebrewed city called San Francisco, and eventually we had a lot of homebrewed material, a lot of playbooks, which are kind of like classes, but they're not quite the same.
Mhm.
And just content, NPCs. The city was built up because I generally run for my mass games a living world, so every game kind of changes the shape of the city and the face of the city. And one day I just said to Sam, like, hey, why don't we just do some art for this and see if we can get it get it up on itch or drive through. um and that created a 400-page PDF, which is the worst generation, which you can find on our store, which is 5 Points Games at itch.io.
That'll be
We
down
did our
in the comment bar if anybody wants to double check, including some of the other things we're going to be mentioning in the video. Just probably should have mentioned that
I
myself.
figured. No, you're good. I figured. So yeah, we did our first Kickstarter. That was a major success. We asked for $4,000. We got $10,000. And then we did Zine Month last year for Blasting Off Again, which is it is Powered by the Apocalypse, but it's not like a full big deep game. It's designed for episodic play and one-shot game where you play as Team Rocket grunts.
Basically,
Um,
here's a wacky scenario. This will help run that.
Right. We designed it sort of as a prelude to A Monster's Tale. It uses the same typings. It uses the same Genmon decks. But if you want to play it with Pokemon, you can do that too. We just can't do that because we don't want to get sued.
Yeah.
Papa Nintendo will come down on that sort of
I
thing.
am very aware,
So
as somebody that currently does streaming for Pokemon Crystal Legacy, I am very aware of the power of Big Daddy Nintendo.
yeah, they do not appreciate you using their things in ways that they don't want you to use it.
I think I've
Um,
mentioned it before as well. I play Pokemon Tabletop United, which is another Pokemon tabletop game, and Nintendo very much did not appreciate them doing that. So it's just kind of been relegated to like back channels.
yes, it has, and I'll tell you a story about Pokemon Tabletop United once we're not recording.
That I would
Um,
appreciate that. But before we get too far off on the tangents, before
yeah,
I forget, you did actually bring up something I wanted to talk about. So while the game primarily uses the Power by the Apocalypse system, as you mentioned, or PBTA, you cite quite a few really cool other inspirations, such as like Hearts of Wulin, Cartel, Masks, as you just said, Thirsty Sword Lesbians, and A More Austere. What do you feel you really drew from those when you were designing this one?
Sure. So all of those are powered by the apocalypse. I don't want to be too pedantic, but powered by the apocalypse isn't really a system.
It's more of like a thing
It's
adjusted from Apocalypse World, I think is correct, right?
it's a a lot of people like to say it's a design philosophy, and I don't necessarily think that that really means anything, but it kind of conveys the intent.
I would agree with you
Power by the
there.
apocalypse has some design tenets that have become kind of ingrained, like playbooks, 2d6 rolling, um, but those are not necessarily requirements. There are PBTA games that don't use 2d6. There are PBTA games that don't use dice at all. Obviously, there's some branches to the tree that is PBTA. You already brought one up before we were recording in Blades in the Dark, and
Yeah.
that one's kind of contentious. A lot of people will tell you that it's not PBTA, but John Harper, who created the system, says it's PBTA. Vincent Baker, who created Apocalypse World, counts it as a branch, an evolution of Powered by the Apocalypse. So my general thought process is, if the creator is saying it's powered by the apocalypse, then it's powered by the apocalypse.
I think like one of the general thing for PBTA was like you basically just have to acknowledge that was the origin, so you can slap it on to just about anything. It kind of reminds me of like this discussion of like what's the difference between a sandwich and a burger, and it's like one is the other, but the other isn't one. It really just comes down to you affiliate yourself with it because you took some inspiration from it.
Humans like to create nomenclature because it's easier to discuss things when you have boxes
Exactly.
to point to and pull things out of. So it makes sense to me why PBTA kind of has crystallized into a certain kind of thing in people's minds. And this doesn't answer the question that you asked me. I apologize.
No, it's fine. This is supposed to be a discussion.
What you
You're not
asked me
supposed to
was,
have a ready answer.
what did I draw from the games that we've sort of cited as inspiration? So from Hearts of Wulin, we developed our duel system. In Hearts of Wulin, combat is different than a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games, and we didn't want a crunchy combat system. We designed A Monster's Tale to be more narrative focused, and combat's not really the goal.
It's a means
because right, it's part of the story, right? But it's not. It's the combat's not important. It's the emotions and the outcome of the combat that's important in the stories, right? So we looked around at a couple systems, and we got a lot of feedback from people during playtesting. So we iterated on the combat system for about a year and a half. This Monster's Tale has had about 3.5 years of playtesting and iteration and tweaking, and we're still kind of in the final moments of quality assurance. We have one more playbook to like really go over, and then the development team, which is myself and Thomas, will finally be done with it, and we'll be moving on to other games, which maybe we'll pimp out some ideas at the end here if there's time.
No, that honestly, that was my hope. I will specify that just for those that are listening in, everything I'm going to be discussing is part of their quick start guide, which is also available via their Kickstarter, which is also going to be where you find the actual play. So there will be some changes that will be different from what we're discussing here into what is the final product, and likely you'll be telling us about it. But for people listening in, there are going to be differences.
I was going to highlight some of those things because we kind of talked about that over DMs.
Yeah.
So yeah, from Hearts of Wulin, we got our duel system. So it depends on sort of, you have style, and it's not a numerical thing or anything like that. It's just it's a narrative positioning of
basically how far somebody above you is positioning wise. It's not a numerical value, but like the difference between a young kid wanting to maybe fight a teenager. Like you don't want to distinctly put an age group, but like if you see a 6-year-old and you see like a 14-year-old, it's like, yeah, that 14-year-old has an advantage.
It's more like the quality of their like, if you're fighting the champion of the region, they are a better Genmon fighter than you, right?
Yeah.
Like that just stands to reason. But yeah, if you're fighting Joey from Route 1, chances are you're probably better off, a better combatant than them. to put it in the most brute way.
What do you mean you beat my
Um,
team of 6 caterpillars? How could you?
right, exactly. So it takes those sorts of things into account, right?
Yeah.
And we've touched that section up, so it's a lot more clear. The quick start I think does a good job, but a
I
lot of
did
people
reread it
outside.
right before this, and that was one of the sections that felt the most understandable to me as somebody that hasn't played as much PBTA that it should.
Sure, and I appreciate you saying that. It will hopefully be even more understandable in the final product, because we spent about 2.5 to 3 weeks during the Kickstarter, because we had a lot of outside play testing done by people. We got a lot of feedback on our Discord um, on parts that were unclear in the wording, so it should be even more tight. Um, from Armor Austere, I'm trying to think if we got anything like majorly mechanical from them. So a lot of things that we cited just in case people
It's best to
saw.
be more cautious than undercautious.
Yeah. Um like there's not a whole lot with from masks that isn't in other Powered by the Apocalypse games, but the game started off as a hack for masks because it was really the only Powered by the Apocalypse games that I was familiar with. But it has very much evolved, amusingly enough, from that. So, but I still wanted to cite it because, again, better to be, just to make sure that everyone knows. I had been reading Armor Austere while working on the game, and I ran a couple sessions of it. So, to be cautious, I can't. I don't think I can cite anything major from Armor Austere that we borrowed, but there might be something in there.
Yeah.
And from Thirsty Sword Lesbians, that is one thing that I can point to and say, oh yeah, we definitely got this from there. Thirsty Sword Lesbians breaks from a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games with its basic moves. So typically in a Powered by the Apocalypse game, you have a basic move that rolls off of just one stat. So you might have like assess the situation from masks, and you roll with superior, which is your brainy stat, right? Whereas in Thirsty Sword Lesbians and in A Monstrous Tale, you roll on stats depending on what you're trying to do in the scene. So if you're assessing the situation to find like a secret, maybe that's not superior. Or if you're trying to gather information from a person, maybe that's not the brainy stat. Maybe you're intimidating them, so it would be the strong stat, right? And that we definitely got from Thirsty Sword Lesbians, where
There's some
what you're
variation to the
trying
attempt. Yeah.
right what you try to do is more important for the stat than the basic move is an umbrella at that point, right? It's
Yeah,
like this is
exactly.
a mode
It's like if I walked up to
working.
somebody and said, "Oh, hi, how are you doing? My name is Rain," and then I could either attempt to be charming, which is me trying to influence them, or I could thunk down a knife at the table. Those are two very different ways of trying to get the same thing.
Right, yeah, and that's definitely something that we have kind of enshrined in our own idiosyncratic Powered by the Apocalypse design. I won't get too far off into the weeds on that, but the we are moving more to basic moves are an umbrella, and it's the approaches that determine sort of like what you want to roll with, and kind of like here are ideas of what this move would look like if you're doing it in the fiction.
Makes sense.
So
So,
yeah.
you mentioned earlier that like you'd only really played masks. What really drew you to using PBTA for this game in particular instead of another system or even making something up from the ground?
I mean, I think in a way we kind of did make something up from the ground. Yeah, it is Powered by the Apocalypse. Yeah, it uses 2d6 for its thing, and it does have stats. But kind of like what we were talking about earlier, Powered by the Apocalypse isn't a system, so it's not like we didn't do a lot of the mechanical design on our own. Yeah, it has playbooks. Yeah, it has moves, but the moves aren't anything like any moves that you find in any other Powered by the Apocalypse game. Um, Other than broad strokes, like this is the talkie move. This is the like the travel mechanics, for example, are completely ours. That whole system. I'm sure there are Powered by the Apocalypse games that sort of do similar things, but I don't know of a Powered by the Apocalypse game, and I've read about 40 now. Um, that really they just don't do it the way that we do it. And I think our way is superior to how most Powered by Apocalypse games kind of run travel. And our complication system, which is kind of really like the core of what we as a company see as good design. The Power by the Apocalypse is all about the narrative and telling interesting stories and playing to find out. So instead of like moves that the GM can take, we cut that language out. It's all about what in the scene changes. How does it change? Is it a consequence of your actions, or is it a complication that you've created in the scene that raises the stakes, right? Or maybe the NPC raises the stakes. So I think in that way, those are very much mechanics and mechanical design that we've sort of invented. And it going back to sort of the inspirations, we were already kind of designing toward that way, but Cartel had really crystallized the concept with us. There are moves in Cartel called drug moves, and they have a very similar approach, but not nearly as widespread as how we do complications. But Cartel showed us that we were on the right track with what we were trying to do. Especially when it comes to like the nature moves that Genmon have, because those each Genmon has its own like mindset, its own proclivities, its own sort of energy that it brings, and depending on how things go in the scene, maybe your Squirtle runs off to investigate something it thought was interesting because it was more interested in that than what you were doing, and thus kind of have to wrangle your Genmon back, right? So it creates drama in the scene, but based on the personality of the Genmon that you're using.
Yeah. Because if getting a bit ahead of ourselves right there, you do actually, the way you have Genmon set up is that there are 7 different personality types that they can be associated with, which does affect things, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they get some moves that they can make. They have sort of they have a list of complications that a GM can add to the scene if they want, based on how their personalities are. But I think, to get back to the original question, that's kind of what attracted me to Powered by the Apocalypse, was just that it handles narrative forward gaming in a way that I like. And that's just sort of kind of, I mean, that's the boring answer, but
boring is the truth, and that's what we're after here. On that crux, actually, that does bring us to another point. In the book, or at least the quick start guide, you guys actually make a very good point of both talking about consent and concern as the matter of players at the table, but also how people in the world are supposed to be treated, as well as the Genmon. You make very good points about Genmon are not to be stolen, Genmon are not supposed to be mistreated, even the bad guys aren't supposed to really go that far with Genmon. How do you feel this really helped with your design aspect as it came to like consent and brutality, as that's such a big topic with a lot of Pokemon like games?
I'm gonna be honest, it didn't really impact it at all. But I mean, I guess it didn't impact it because it wasn't a conscious thing that we wanted, that like was at the forefront. Like, we just went in with the assumption that you weren't going to be an asshole to your Pokemon, or your Genmon, sorry.
It makes sense.
So the reason why it's outright stated is just because, as you know, with gamers, if it's not written down,
they'll try to do it anyways.
A lot of time,
yeah,
right. They'll go, well, it wasn't in the book, so so
raw and rye, which is a whole other side conversation.
Right. Yeah. So it wasn't like it was an afterthought. Like, it was just, why would we want to make a game about animal abuse?
Exactly.
Right. So yeah. So
which in a way
that
is
sense, it was
doing more than a lot of folks that have done similar games don't tend to bring that up. So even the fact that you put it in the book, even partially, is more of a step ahead than a lot of that I've seen.
We try to be cognizant of the sorts of people that the hobby can attract.
It makes sense.
Which is maybe the most diplomatic way I can put that.
We try to be diplomatic here.
Yeah.
On that note, though, you
I'm
also.
Not saying...
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna
No,
say
no,
on a similar note, you actually so going away from the Genmon aspect and just to the treatment of players, you guys make a very good point of having a full section just discussing safety tools, which I thought was also a great thing to see. Not just because you mention it at all, but also the fact that you offer multiple suggestions, not commandments, but suggestions on options, and
Yeah,
that was pretty
you'll
cool.
you'll you'll find that in Power by the Apocalypse games. We're not the only one that does that.
Mm.
Like Hearts of Ruin also uses cats, which I forget what the anagram is for, but
I'll
it's
put that
kind of a
up on the
safety
screen
tool.
right now so people can take a look at it.
Yeah, it's like it's not a safety tool per se, but it's a table tool to sort of align everyone into the into a uniformed consensus on the tone. Like one, I think T does stand for tone. Um, but yeah, it's just it's there to make sure that everyone's on the same page of
I'm,
like, is this game gonna be mostly comedy? Is this game gonna be really sad? Like, it's just a barometer on where everyone wants the tone and the
kind of
style and
covering the things that would be in a session 0, basically.
yeah, it's part of session 0. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, no, we're not the only PBTA game that I know of that includes safety tools. So you know,
To be fair,
and
it's also
even if
to be
yeah,
fair, it
go
was
ahead.
also
I'm
just
sorry.
to be fair, it was also just going like you didn't specifically exclude it, so the fact that you left it is also a sign. So it was just me giving you guys due for that. Given that I've
Oh well,
seen
yeah.
a big resurgence in TSR, bro, woke is broke, don't care about your feelings kind of thing. It's still an
We,
important aspect.
we are a majority LGBTQ plus whatever anagram you want to use.
It's I'm gonna
Rainbow
say I'm older
Alliance,
school on
whatever.
that one. I'm still LGBT, but I know there's like QIA plus, and it's like
Yeah,
it's a very big
I'm
mouthful.
I'm also older school, but I yeah, I usually use LGBTQ plus. Just but yeah, there's a lot of variation,
Yeah,
and none of them are wrong.
none of them are wrong.
Um,
No, it's just
so
it's just a very long mouthful, and generally I do not have time for the full alphabet. That is to say that alphabet is still beautiful. I support all allies. This is a LGBTQIA inclusive channel. It's just a very long
right,
thing, which I don't want to make the focus of this, but definitely it's
yeah,
good
yeah,
to
you're
see.
good.
I should probably I'm gonna put up right about now is your 5 point. What does the 5 point stand for thing? Just because I did think that was cool, so that'll pop up right about now.
Oh, well, thank you. We've had a couple people be rather uncharitable about that, calling us kind of corporate shills, but I believe in everything on that list, and one of the points is transparency,
Hmm.
and I think being transparent is explaining like our philosophy of game design and company ethics. Um,
Well, it's definitely one of the
so
things that got me wanting to speak with you guys in the first place, especially given how the TTRPG space is getting lately with AI generation and a lot of people being hucksters, smash and grabs with just dropping material and then leaving, all that. The fact that you guys did have transparency, openness, ethics really were something I thought would be cool to chat with you. Just I respected that's something you guys were cognizant of.
well, thank you. And also, just to add on the AI point, we are anti-AI.
Very much same here.
There will never be any AI in our content.
That was one of my first
Um,
concerns. That's why I was also like, I'm probably gonna put more of her art right here. Just be like, yeah, this stuff is amazing. Support artists, guys.
yeah, Kelly is she her, or they them. I think.
Sorry, I
Sometimes.
should have specified when I,
So.
but Kelly's art will be right here. Just as again, the Jerboa one they have is one of my personal favorites from what they have out so far.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and that one I think is one of the more basic ones. Like it looks more or less like the animal.
I'm gonna
Um,
part of what I like about Pokemon in general is when they're kind of animal-ish. I'm probably going to get ratioed in the chat with whatever I say here, but I personally like it when they're less humanoid because it's gotten to the point where a lot of them just start looking like, even as a guy that has an anthropomorphic fox as his avatar, it's gotten to the point where it's just a dude.
Yeah. So one of the well, not stretch goals. Sorry. One of the tier back rewards was creating your own Genmon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of the rules that we put out to the people who bought that tier was no anthropomorphic
Yeah.
Genmon.
I I I will say that anybody's Pokemon that they love, you're allowed to love that Pokemon. I wish they would stay on four legs more often. I I
I don't
still
mind two legs, but
it's not a
like
huge thing, but
I'm
it's like when I'm looking at like Gothette and Gardevoir and all that, I'm like, mm, mm,
yeah, those are just dudes
yeah.
or ladies in their case.
I
But
think
yeah,
part of it's like
um,
this is also going to be like I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. I dislike it when they specifically genderize a Pokemon. I don't know if that's a word, but like where you look at like that very much has traditional female or male features and it just feels wrong, if that makes sense. But we're getting off topic. I apologize.
no, you're good. You're good.
But yes, I very much want to say no AI. Side tangent. I'm just gonna say my contest is still going right now, guys. Make sure you sign up. We have an art contest going. We have an art contest going right now on the channel. We have amazing prizes. I'll have those pop up right here. Please sign up. We still have plenty of space for entries. But to get back to the topic at hand, um, when you were talking about how much you wanted the game to be narrative focused moving forward. Uh, Using the mon in a narrative way in the world building, uh it's always a concern when you're having this kind of setup or story. Is just like you do specify like teenagers and such in your like document of like who's to be going on these journeys. How do you guys have things set up for like, hey, that's a teenager running around with Pokemon or Genmon, and it's offense essentially a flamethrower. So how do you have that with the narrative?
I mean, it just kind of leans on the conventions that you're not going to be like burning houses down. There's nothing enforcing it, but other than just one of the strengths I think of is in Powered by the Apocalypse is that it
Consequences.
emulates well there yes consequences, but PBTA games enforce the tropes and narrative conventions that they kind of lean on, like in Masks, which is about teenage drama through the lens of superheroes. It's not a superhero game per se. Um, there's the convention of you don't kill people. You're not murderers.
Mm,
You could be supervillains if you wanted to be, but it's not it's not what the game's about, right?
exactly.
Um, and in that same way, that's not what Pokemon's about. That's not what Jade Cocoon's about. It's not what Golden Sun's well, Golden Sun maybe is a little is
A little bit.
a little less about not killing people. It is a JRPG, so
There's a lot.
there is um, vagabond murder
Yeah,
going on in that game. But you know what I mean.
I
Like
do.
it's still cartoony.
You're basically saying that
So
the system itself is set up in a way that it doesn't encourage and it won't enforce that kind of behavior. It's like it's very much if all your rules are aimed toward combat, then everything is looking. If everything is if
right.
you all you have is a hammer, everything's going to get nailed. So with PBTA, things are meant more to be narratively. So you're not gonna it doesn't reward you for going down and being violent. Hey, you get experience for being violent. In this one, it's the game itself prevents or in I don't want to say inhibit, but doesn't reward that kind of behavior.
Right, and it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't even broach that sort of behavior.
Mm.
Um, so it's sort of just a self-enforcing thing. Like we can't stop anyone at their table from
Well,
being
yeah,
murder
no.
hobos, but
Homebrew is a
uh,
thing. People will likely take this system and say, you know, it'd be great if we could just start like adding XP for destroying things. Let's make this rampage.
sure. But at that point, they're really not playing the game.
Well, exactly, yeah.
So you said that you're not entirely familiar with PBTA. Most, well, not all. This kind of gets back to that there is no univocal uh mechanic in PBTA, but in a lot of PBTA games, you don't actually get XP for doing things. You get XP for failing to do things.
Yep, yep. Fail forward, as you said
So
earlier. I've
yeah,
read
fail.
I've read enough of it to like know the grasps of all like the going forward. You have the malices or the detriments, the maximums and stuff. It's just not anything I would say I'm an expert at. I try to make sure I never proffer myself at. I never try to go, oh, I definitely know how that works because nobody likes a liar.
Sure. I don't know anything, so uh
Well, you know enough to hopefully
but yeah,
talk about your
so
game.
uh Well, hopefully I'm getting it across that I know that I can talk about it, but
Well, you
it's been
did
a good
mention that you
show.
were more likely to be experienced in the gimmick or the mechanics, which is actually the next thing I was going to ask you about, as the mechanics and such. One of the first ones that comes up is the gimmicks, which you guys have for the
Mhm.
system. The way
Right.
you had specified it in your document was each region is going to have a gimmick that you can spend points on. And in the one that you have pre-built into the system as its own little campaign is the shuffle. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so the shuffle mechanic kind of was maybe one of the flashpoints for building the game to begin with. Um, so you can swap typings on your Genmon by spending from a pool that you have as a character as a player. So if you have a fire type, you can make it a water type, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and it just kind of gives versatility to the players. Um, if they have a beast type, which is kind of like our animal type, you can add a fire type to it, and depending, and the typing is kind of like how you roll to hit things. There's no like attack stat. It's primarily based on the types, because Pokemon is all about and this genre of games is typically has a rock paper scissors kind of mechanic when it comes to combat.
Yeah.
That's what makes the game tactical. So the shuffle mechanic is there. It wasn't originally designed to make life easier on the players, but through playtesting, the shuffle mechanic really, like, it's very hard to pin a player down at any point just through typings. Um,
Yeah.
but you have to be judicious about it because you don't have a lot of them.
Yeah.
Um,
Like,
so,
not to
but
get too much
it,
into
it
it, but at least with how you guys set up in PBTA when you're doing initiative, typing is important for basically, I don't want to say your initiative so much as the slight bonuses you might get to getting hit or not getting hit.
so yeah, there's no initiative
Well, it
in the
says
sense
at
of being
initiative is how it's written in the book, if I remember correctly.
maybe I would have to take a look. It's been a long time since I wrote that. Um, but there's no like this person goes first, this person goes second.
Yeah, no, it
Sort
was
of
just
all just
basically when you're rolling when you have two mon going at initiative, you have the weaknesses and advantages, and then you roll for it. I believe is how it went.
maybe. Again, it's been a long time. I've been writing a lot of other stuff, so the phraseology kind of changes game to game. Um, and I'm the main writer for the company, so you'd think I would remember, but I've written a lot, so unfortunately, I don't.
No worries. I
I don't
wasn't
have.
trying to catch you on anything there. It was just,
No, no, you're
uh,
you're good.
but one of the questions I was going to have is, as you mentioned, this is meant to be more of a narrative focused thing mechanically. How do you feel narratively the gimmick of shuffling actually works in the game? Is it like the Genmon are adjusting themselves, or is it kind of more
They
similar
have
to the crystallization thing they did for the latest Pokemon?
Yeah, and they took that idea from us. I will die on that hill. We had shuffle long before they had terrestrialization in Pokemon. We actually had someone be like, "Oh, so this is just Terra Celestian
That
from
words,
Scarlet and Violet." Like, no, no, it's not. We had this idea first. Um, so
but
yeah, they
not
had
saying
like
it's the same
a
thing. But
no,
is that
no.
kind of how you view the
I'm making a
mechanic?
comment that other people have accused us of taking, or
Yeah,
not accused us, but have said that we took it from
a
it.
lot of
Which
people forget
I'm
that
saying,
these games are in process so long that things happen almost. We're not getting to that. it,
yeah, no,
so,
yeah. I mean, most it's all been in good spirits, but
yeah,
yeah. Well, a couple of the gimmicks that we have that we have as examples are taken from Pokemon. We have Mega Evolution as a example gimmick that you might use. We have Dynamax as well, and like Z moves and stuff. So it's not like we didn't try to borrow gimmicks from the Pokemon games, but Shuffle is honestly my own idea. I came up with it long before anything in Pokemon kind of did the same thing.
yep.
Um,
But not saying
but
it's
yeah,
the same thing, but effectively that's kind of how you visualize the thing working narratively. I'm guessing is what I'm trying to phrase it.
there's no harder there's nothing written in the book that tells you what it's supposed to look like. In our playtesting, they had like a little like it was part of their Pokedex basically. It was
Gotcha.
when we did playtest, we didn't have our full Genmon deck, so we actually did just play with Pokemon.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it just magically changed their typing.
Makes sense.
There was, you know,
It's essentially just them preparing for an encounter. Yeah.
yeah, there was no real no deep lore to it. Because we didn't really, you know, that's not what you do in playtesting, right?
Yep. Yep. So
Yeah.
I'll skip on to the next thing then.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Well, no, in the travel mechanics, that's actually something I was. You have specific mechanics for traveling in this, as that's a big part of any collection games thing, is your journey from one spot to another, finding what you can. You actually have a specific mechanic for like preparing, which was a rolling plus your empty Genmon slots. I was actually kind of curious how you felt that affected things, reflected the narrative. Like, is it basically you have less Genmon, so you don't have to worry about feeding as much, or
It was mostly a purely meta decision. Choice is power, and versatility is power. If you have a full team of 6, you can have almost all the typings without needing to worry about gimmick if you choose your party well. And you see that in games like Pokemon and other monster catching games where
Yep.
the more diverse your team is, the more able you are to sort of flex on enemies, right?
Yep. Well, this was more about gear.
Right. I'm getting there.
Sorry, my apologies.
No, you're good. So gear is also really powerful. You can heal. You can there's special gear that no one has got to see yet because we don't actually have the full gear list out toward it to anybody, which was a mistake in hindsight, but not one that we could have corrected easily because it wasn't actually done. Until
One
like,
second. Just to clarify to people, in the playtest document, gear is basically described as open and declared. Declared is things that you have prepared already before you leave out. Open is things that you can say that you got in town but don't already have written on your sheet, and you just spend it posthumously because it's something you would have bought. Just to clarify
right,
for
you
those
just think,
listening.
oh yeah, no, I picked a potion up in town. I totally have that. I'm spending it.
Just clarifying that for people listening.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So yeah, the reason that gear is based off of empty Genmon slots, and we went back and forth on that, Thomas and I, a number of times. I still think that Thomas is not quite sold on that, but I put my foot down on this, is that it's just a way to balance people. The smaller the team,
not to take sides, at least from my reading of it, and I'm gonna call myself out here. I have been called a rules conservative before because I tend to really like reading the rules and I like analyzing it and understanding it. From my reading of it, I thought it actually worked quite well because it basically meant if you have a full team of 6, you need less potions because you have more variety. So the less you have, the more gear you need to make up for it. So I thought it balanced quite well, in my opinion. Not to take a side.
And that was that, and that's the TLDR. I can be a little verbose. It's not that Thomas didn't understand the thought process. He just thought that we could have handled gear in a different way. But
I feel like in PBTA, at least from my reading of this version of it, is simpler is better. So not making it super intricate is to its benefit. Like in the rule system, you guys mentioned, you specified in the things before, if you wanted everything to be declared, that is an option. If you wanted things to be a bit more rough and tumble. So I felt like it was a fair balance, in my opinion.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and that was really what it came down to, is just the more Genmon you have, the more health they have, the less likely you are to be taken out. You don't need 1,000 healing potions in your back pocket, but if you only have 2 or 3, you benefit from gear more with the less Genmon that you have. So it's balanced around kind of enforcing that reality by not by fiat, but just the rules are designed to support play in that way.
Yeah, it makes sense. You're trying to like get your team of 6, be comfortable with having a full team, and then kind of circle around there.
Yeah, in PBTA, mechanics are built around the narrative, not the other way around.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So it's there to enforce the narrative of the less Genmon you have, the more gear you can use on those, and you're likely to need that gear. So yeah, it's designed in that way. I mean, and some of the playbooks you haven't got to see, because there are 10 playbooks. There's only 4 in the quick start.
Yeah,
there are. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that actually leads me up to my next question. I was going to ask you about of the journeys that you have set up. So, fun fact for those that don't know, in PBTA, the way it generally works is you can only have one type of class, or in this version, journey. So for each player, each player can only pick one thing, and there can only be one of those at the table. So of the journeys that you've made, or to make it easier for some folks, classes, which are the ones that you felt you liked the most? Or do you have a favorite, I guess is the best way I'm trying to put this?
No, I don't. And not for any reason other than I've spent 3 years on this project, and my goal was to make all the playbooks, or journeys as they're called in this game, equally good, or equally viable, or equally fun to play. I feel like I've threaded that relatively well, but time will tell. I would say the champion's probably the most basic. So if you're looking for something a little bit more crunchy or intricate, then the champion's probably not what you're gonna want to go with. But I feel like there should be an intro playbook to look at. So yeah,
I feel like I might have phrased my question wrong, because I was more saying which one is your favorite, like that you would like to play.
No, I understood what you meant.
Okay.
It's the same answer. I'm not really in. As the designer, I don't look, and maybe this is the wrong way to be, but I try to divorce myself from playing the game. Part of that is I'm a forever GM. The last time I actually got to be a player was maybe 5 years ago. So it's been a long time since I've been a player. But I don't want to bias myself, and I don't want there to be any hooks that people can latch onto by saying, oh, well, this is clearly the playbook that Kyle wanted to play, so it has all the best toys, and I don't want that.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I try to be objective in my design and say what toys should these things have, what toys do I think fit the narrative for this playbook. So yeah, there's no one playbook that I would like to play the most. I like the concept of the transfer the most, because it's a fish out of water story, and it really supports people people saying, I don't know anything about this region, so I get to ask questions, and I get to inject ideas into the narrative and sort of write the region along with the GM. But that's just PBTA in a nutshell. It's cooperative. It's a conversation. But I wouldn't say it's my favorite. Just because, again, I want to be objective. So I think all 10 of the core playbooks are interesting. I know that the Invigorated is Thomas's favorite. And that's one of the playbooks that's used in the AP. Thomas actually plays the Invigorated in the actual play that we have. Lily, who is the GM for our actual play, really likes the Idol. She actually playtested the Idol, and she playtested the Ranger. I know she's pretty big on the Ranger too. Trying to think. I don't know if the other 3 in the AP actually have a favorite. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see when the game is actually out what playbooks people gravitate to.
Well, you guys are going to be coming out that pretty soon. Your Kickstarter just finished up. How long ago? About a month, I think.
Like 2 or 3 months. We ended in March.
Time travels fast.
March, April, May. Yeah.
You don't have a date for the full release, did you yet?
Not an official date, no. The plan is to get the PDF out to backers by the end of the year, it probably won't have all the art, because just it's a lot of art to do. And then hopefully the full PDF will be available for sale sometime next year with all the art, and then the books will the files will be sent to the printer, because we do have physical copies for backers. And then once that's done, they will be sent out when we are able to do that.
Makes sense. So I assume that all that information will be either available on the Kickstarter page itself or through your guys' own itchio, I'm assuming.
So part of that transparency thing is that we are pretty active with updates. Following us on Blue Sky or Twitter, following the Kickstarter page. We have a Discord. There should be a link on Kickstarter for people who do Discord.
Or if not, it'll be down in the description below to also help with that.
Sure. And Discord's probably the easiest way to get a hold of us. I'm on Discord 24/7 basically. And if I'm not around, someone else who knows a thing or two will be around. So we're pretty bad about Twitter and Blue Sky just because they're toxic as hell. But we have bi-monthly updates for the Kickstarter. There should be one this month. So yeah, as things progress, and we do update on itch. So yeah, there will be information out when it's available.
No worries. I just figured I'd get that out there for those listening to be eager and getting ready for it. I think we're getting close to the end here, so I had one more kind of jocular question, and then it'd just your wrap up of anything that you want people to keep eyes. Of the Genmon that you guys have made, do you happen to have any personal favorites that you like?
Yeah. I don't. Because again, I try not to play favorites. And by the way, I told you we would fill up 20 minutes easy. So I'm very verbose. I apologize.
No, that's fine. There'll be some trimming.
Kelly really likes pigeons. I'm pretty sure Pidgeot is her favorite. It took the longest to do of the ones that we have out, because she wanted to make it perfect. And it's as close to perfect as I can think. I don't actually know what Sam's favorite is. I don't think we've ever.
You'll have to ask that. Sam, and then I'll have it here as the big reveal.
Sure. I think Sam's in a similar boat with me in that he doesn't have a favorite, but I could be wrong. Like I said, I don't think if Sam has said what his favorite is, I don't remember what it is. I think Thomas's favorite is also Pidgeot, but it might not be. His might be the Cindersqueak.
Okay.
Again, basically everyone. So in the company, basically everyone's favorite Genmon is the one that's newest in the art role, right?
I mean, that makes sense in a way.
Yeah.
So,
but I think. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say. So it sounds like there's really is just like nobody wants to pick a favorite. They're all your favorite. So.
Yeah, I mean, how do you choose your favorite child, right?
Well, it depends which one takes care of the chores.
Sure. Well, that would have been my brother then. But I long suspected that. But I think generally, like in the community that we've sort of built up around the game, Pomeranian is pretty high up on the rankings.
That one did seem pretty cool to me.
Yeah, Platinquint, which is our water starter, basically, is often cited as people's favorites. People really like Stratosphere, which is sort of like a giant dragon creature. That one might be my favorite, but not because of what it is, but I'll reserve this for after the conversation.
Well, you can't do that, but no, that makes sense. So I think we're getting kind of wrapping up here. So is there any other things that you'd like to like shout out for the Kickstarter or your group at all? Just any other little tidbits you want to tell us before we sign off?
Sure. So yeah, you kind of highlighted this. And I know we've gone a little long, and I know you want to keep it within a time, but I think this is really important to say. There's a couple things in the Quickstarter that no longer are in the game. Like be the very best is a basic move. It doesn't exist anymore.
Did you find that
So
there was
the
some
Quickstarter.
too much connection with the other property?
No, not because of that. It's just it didn't do anything mechanically that other basic moves didn't do, and it just was superfluous. That just didn't need to exist. So he took it out. And there's a number of things like that where we've smoothed things out. We've altered some of the base mechanics. The idle playbook looks nothing like the idle playbook does in the quick start. We changed it a lot. So the quick start is very much a beta 2.0 that people have access to. So if there's something that you don't grok with in the quick start, if you take a look at the quick start, and we hope that you do, it's fairly beefy as far as quick starts go. Keep in mind that we constantly iterate and quality test and look at. That's one of the core principles of our design team. So myself and Thomas, we aren't satisfied with anything that we do until we get it to right where we want it. And we've been doing this for a long time. Thomas has been in the industry for as long as I have, more or less. Or sorry, in the hobby, not in the industry. So we've developed a pretty tight quality test for our content, and we're always striving to anything that we designed before we strike on that, like, okay, no, we know this is good, we have this exactly where we want it. We don't just say, okay, well, now we move on to the next thing. We take a look back at the things that we made before and go, how do we bring this up to this standard?
Makes sense.
How do we elevate this? How do we make this as good? And that, that goes back to, I don't have a favorite because I'm constantly looking at things to revise and test and tweak and sand down and repaint
And polish and clarify
yeah,
and all those
and
other little
all
words.
those terms. Yeah. So
Makes
yeah,
sense.
it's hard for me to be personal with the things that I write. I'm not allowed to be too pessimistic. But I look at everything that I write as a transitory state.
Makes sense.
And yeah, nothing that I write is ever really written in stone. Everything is open to change if it doesn't work out. And I hope that level of dedication and that level of commitment to the quality of our content shines through. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's really all I can hope for, is that people see that we are dedicated to putting out the best product that we think we can make. And yeah, I guess that's all I can really say is we stand by our design philosophy, and our design philosophy is that we don't want to make the best game. We want to make the game that is the most fun to play, because I don't think there's a best one. But yeah, so Monster's Tale is not the only thing that we've worked on. Obviously, we have a ton of masks content. That if people like masks, we have like a 400-page book, plus we have a hack for Persona. I don't know if you're big into Persona, the video game series, but we have a masks hack for Persona. And that has 10 playbooks in it. There's 14 playbooks for masks that we've done, and I know there's 3 more coming. One probably will be coming out relatively soon, because that's really one of the ones that I want to get out. And yeah, we're working on more content, like more Monster Tale content. We have another region coming that we didn't quite get stretch gold, but we promised that we were going to do it anyway. And we have no intent to just not do more Monster Tale content. We believe in supporting our content, with splat books and extra stuff. I guess I'll do this teaser because I know this is going to happen. I brought up the Persona hack for masks. the two projects that I'm working on right now, and I'm not sure which one's going to become the main project, but they're going to be released sort of as teaser alphas to see people's interest. I'm working on a game called Outlaw Hearts. It's inspired by the golden age of anime, mostly Outlaw Star, which is a fairly old anime for people who are in the know, and One Piece. That's the one I'm currently working on right now, and we are going to be doing a second edition of Midnight Generation. Probably won't be called that, but we are going to be doing our own in-house Persona game. Not that is not a hack of maths. It will have its own rule set, and both of them will be PPTA because that's kind of what we do.
Sounds like
But
you guys
certainly our
have
own. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
sounds like you guys have quite a bit down in the pipe. It's good to have a little bit of a teaser reveals. That's something I can incentivize people to listen through the video for. And I really wanted to thank you so much for joining us tonight, Kyle. It's really cool to get a little peek behind the curtain on some game design.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me, and hopefully your audience will enjoy listening to me kind of ramble and just be really wordy.
Well, here's hoping your fans enjoy it too. I'm sure that you'll post this in the Discord and they'll
Oh yeah,
wonder who this guy
absolutely.
is with Kyle.
Yeah, we post everything to our Discord. So like I
But
said, that really is the best place to get info
makes
from
sense.
us.
I'm so glad you're able to share some of these details with us. You're able to clarify some things. It's good to know that there are going to be some changes from the playtest document or quick start document into what's going to be coming out. And it sets some good expectations for folks to know when it'll be coming out. I'm
Yeah.
again, so this will be me kind of signing off here, but thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this type of content and listening to me talk with creators and the TTRP sphere, please hit that subscribe button. We're working our way on to 500 subs, which will be having an additional contest past the one we're on right now, which is a art and giveaway contest. Thank you so much for joining us, Kyle, and for sharing these details in these games. It's going to be really cool getting a preview on the stuff coming out when it comes out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, and that'll be us for tonight, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks so much for staying by. Bye.